Okay. Okay. Hey, so today I was going to talk to you about the art project thing that we've been working on this whole time. Well, it's kind of looking like it's not going 100% to plan, and by looking like, I mean it's not. Every time that I keep trying to make work, I end up watching TV instead, specifically anime instead, and I've become particularly fascinated by the blue skies and clouds that are depicted in animes. So yeah, here we are. Every time I try and work, I get sucked into an anime and end up obsessing over the blue skies instead. I'm being held hostage by my own brain. It just wants clouds. I wake up crying the night after watching Your Name just because of the overwhelming sadness I feel from the scenes with those emotional blue skies. I took a picture of the sky every day and ranked them in a spreadsheet. I stopped taking my sleeping tablet and sat awake all night so that I didn't miss the perfect blue morning sky. I left Ingrid waiting on her 30th birthday alone in a restaurant because I was chasing what I thought was the perfect cloud. There was a day where the sky was almost so perfect and I was so desperate to witness it that I stared directly into the sun, even as my eyes burned. But no sky was good enough. Side story, but this one time me and Ingrid were in Leeds and she was looking for the perfect coat and she couldn't find one, and she thought that she would never feel warmth again unless she found the perfect coat. This is me. I will never make work again unless I can find the perfect blue sky. Sorry, I realise I'm rambling and this isn't totally relevant, and it's a little bit magical thinking, but with all the anime I've been watching and seeing people have their moments of clarity, their moment of reckoning, I thought, maybe I just need the perfect blue sky. Maybe that's what I've been missing this whole time. I kind of just had to make that up, was it okay? Okay, rest of the cards. Where are they? So that leads us up to, one more thing, where it came from. So I was doing an art commission and asked to be put in a bright space with a breakout room and got put in a windowless shopping centre with a broom closet instead, which is pure sensory hell for me, by the way. I became hyper aware of my body. I was very visibly anxious, visibly stimming to soothe, all of that. And in that moment, it honestly felt like the walls were going to close in on me and I was going to be swallowed, which I wasn't that averse to anyway, because at least it would have taken me out of the situation. But anyway, the commissioners came 4 hours late. They 100% forgot my name. They called Ingrid Indigo, but one thing they didn't forget was to introduce us as their autistic artists. And that stayed with me, So afterwards, I ran to the toilets, locked myself in the cubicle, and this is when it happened. I got out my phone and put on an episode of My Hero Academia. Over the city was a gorgeous blue sky with big white fluffy clouds. And it was in this moment that it really got me. The sky got me. This is when I started becoming obsessed. I've always felt super calmed and weirdly fascinated by the perfectly blue skies with the perfect fluffy clouds in anime. I mean, anime is already a hyperfixation of mine, but this sky situation has just become a hyperfixation on a hyperfixation. There's some good, do you want to record while I practice? Are you recording? Sorry, okay. There's some pretty good stuff on the internet if you traipse through, is that a word? Traipse. If you traipse through Tumblr and Reddit, linking anime and autism. And although these are mainly just recounts of people dumping their interests, unofficial studies say that the visual storytelling and the characters design with very clear and easy to interpret intentions are some of the reason for the autistic anime fandom. There's also very autistic coded characters such as Lane from Serial Experiments Lane, whose special interest is the internet, where she is literally God, which contrasts with her in real life of isolation and social anxiety. Or Illumi from Hunter x Hunter, who executes a task with ruthless efficiency, which leads him to burning out and hibernating. These types of characters are part of the reason why loads of people on the internet seem to put forward a case that anime is like a magnet for autistic interest. This is just some background ramblings. What I'm actually going to talk about is my hyperfixation to do with blue skies and fluffy clouds in anime. For something that is literally just a background, there's actually a surprising amount of debate on the internet about blue skies and about clouds in anime. I mean, maybe it's not so surprising considering that my source is Reddit. My Hero Academia, an anime literally about kids fighting with superpowers. Fans debated hard after a scene had a bright blue sky during a moment that classically may have been put against a dark, gloomy background. People were mad, honestly. People were tweeting things like, "It's really bad to me, actually," which is the ultimate insult if you ask me. But others more lucid, responding with, "It's not that deep. Nature doesn't care about humans' everyday battles, bro," which I agree with. I prefer fighting about whether food should or shouldn't be on a plate with the internet instead. No, seriously, there's a whole subreddit for that. Sometimes the clouds and perfect skies are really subtle, like in Angel Beats. You can see the clouds and skies are reflected on the piano in the image of a CD jacket. Sometimes the sky and clouds are sources of offerings to characters, like in Death Note when Light gets a notebook after it gently falls from the sky. The faces of people lost or missed can appear in clouds, and these clouds can symbolise arguments and reunion. They can also be really randomly used for things like a censorship of a character changing, or a source of punchable power, or a way to inform battle strategy. For the sake of without adding too much meaning. For example, what if the makers of My Hero just felt like putting the blue sky in the scene for aesthetic vibes, as opposed to applying deep symbolic meanings? Okay. I'm ready. I think the symbolism and meanings are really... you can just carry on. I think the symbolism and greater meanings are really interesting, but they are not what I want to focus on today. I also like to think about the process behind making art, the visuals of it, for the sake of, without adding too much, for the sake of it. Okay, I get it, I get the sentence now. I didn't understand the sentence that I had written, can I just say. I think the symbolism and greater meanings are really interesting, but they are not what I'm here to talk about today. I also like to think about the process behind art and the visuals of it for the sake of it without adding too much meaning. For example, what if the makers of My Hero just felt like putting a blue sky in this scene for aesthetic vibes as opposed to applying some deep symbolic meaning? I read an academic article recently that talked about the approach that scholars take on discussing anime. And apparently, typical anime visuals have been, I quote, mined for sociological meaning. More recently, there's been kind of a shift, with a few scholars pushing for anime to be recognised as a form of creative expression in itself, without needing to have symbolic meaning behind it. Like, maybe when they made the 100 Girlfriends Who Really Love You, they were simply just thinking about 100 girlfriends who really love you. The blue... Bleh? Okay. My brain is not braining. The blue skies and clouds that stand out to me the most are ones made by Makoto Shinkai in his films like Your Name. I love reading interviews about him, about the process and the meaning behind the clouds and skies within his films. When asked about the physical distance between the characters and the sky backdrops and the meaning and symbolism behind this, he simply replies, "I can't really say anything, apart from sometimes this is the style." He says that when storyboarding, sometimes every single cloud in the sky has a particular symbolism, but sometimes there is no intention, it's just a vibe. For Makoto Shinkai, the approach to meaning is sometimes stuff means stuff, sometimes it doesn't mean stuff. Sometimes things are meaningful in certain situations, and sometimes you just do stuff because you like it or it looks cool. In another interview, he talks about admiring blue skies and admiring pretty girls, but not being able to get either, and talks about how he loved dreaming of blue skies because they were out of reach in polluted Tokyo. Done. I read up on his process of creating these beautiful blue skies, which for him seemed more important than the symbolic nature of them. For Weathering With You, he hired a meteorologist who looked over 110 minutes of storyboard and corrected him with any mistakes as to how the clouds were shaped. I read an interview with him and a cloud specialist, and he sounded more excited than any interview where he's talking about the nuances of his work. He says, "I have held another long desire. I wish I could see or know what happens in a cloud." And he refutes the idea that his obsession with weather is anything political. Shinkai vibing with the clouds more than talking about the symbolic meaning behind his art makes me feel better about being here and just rambling. And more than anything else, I loved his attitudes to clouds in art, which in many ways mirrored my hyper-focus and also absent-mindedness. For example, as well as getting consultants for the clouds in some of his films, he also studied the science of clouds himself. In Weathering Review, after all of this work, he then forgot to add the clouds to the climax scene in the original cinematic release and had to re-edit it for Blu-ray. Relatable. So an anime studio's process is usually this. The layout is distributed to the background artist after the drawing director checks. The director then begins painting the scenery that will serve as a backdrop for each cut. Each image is completely static, with some exceptions made with the help of computer graphics. So the background art is able to contain far more detail than the animated frames placed on top of it. So basically, a cloud and sky maker is its own job. A distinct level of artistic output in the anime world. Lots of the most important background guys have quit or retired from the anime sector, and people forecast that this will have a negative impact on those juicy blue skies. So after doing all this research, I did what any person would do and went on a hunt for the perfect blue sky. I tried to understand measuring clouds in octaves, but unfortunately it involved maths, and I thought I found an article on clear skies yassification, but it turned out it was classification, which I was less interested in. I ran a best cloud experiment and implemented a quantitative assessment framework that comprehensively encompassed a spectrum of relevant and salient categories, including how much do I want to bounce on the cloud and how much does the blue burn my eyes. I thought if I'd find the perfect blue sky, I'd find the perfect conditions to create work. I'd reach freedom, have my moment of reckoning and clarity. The blue sky will be the replacement for my perfect conditions to create art. Everything anyone had ever said to me that had caused discomfort in creative space would be erased, and I'd create the perfect art piece. The end. Except it wasn't the end. As I ran for months, searching for the perfect blue sky, I never found it, but I couldn't deal with that conclusion. If I couldn't find the perfect blue sky naturally, I had to find an alternative. I tried a VR headset, but got stuck in a fashion show at the Metaverse and couldn't get out. I bought a movie called Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs for $4.99, but it turns out the clouds are made of meatballs. I mean, it said a chance of meatballs, so I thought I'd give it a go. I realised these virtual clouds on headsets weren't going to cut it. I needed more. I felt like a maliciously neglected sim stuck in the social experiment of a bored child looking to speedrun some trauma. My capacity for life dropping as my food, energy, fun and hygiene depleted. My mania around all things clouds was increasing, and I was losing grasp on reality and my own self. My friends became worried as I became more obsessive. With nowhere left to turn, I asked ChatGPT for some mental health advice around my manic obsession with clouds. It confirmed everything I already knew. I was excessively watching clouds, had grandiose feelings about clouds, and irrational anger and annoyance towards anyone who didn't share my obsession or understanding. As I sat alone with my flat can of Dr. Pepper and desperation to reach the sky, I begged ChatGPT to help fix me. I couldn't carry on like this for much longer. And the response? The response was interesting. It told me, it's natural to have hobbies and interests, and if you're passionate about clouds and want to capture the perfect cloud or experience clouds in a particular way, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. So you heard it here first. There's nothing inherently wrong with me. After months of feeling like an RPG character destined to complete the final boss level, where my success hinged on reaching up and grasping the final sword, a persistent glitch denied my fingers the satisfaction of touching the coveted prize. It was during this thought that I came to realise that it was the act of touch itself that I truly desired. And so, I spent months making my own clouds. Over the course of 4 months, I made over 100 cotton wool clouds, repeating the ChatGPT mantra, there is nothing inherently wrong with me, and surviving off of fizzy strawberry laces alone. Let me tell you, that rush you get from creating a perfect cloud formation is incomparable. As the months passed and my art deadline approached, I'd become apathetic about making any art at all. Then one day, as I lay in bed replaying every single embarrassing thing I've ever said in my head, it clicked. I'd made the art, I'd made the clouds, and without realising, I had in fact created my perfect conditions to create art. Okay, it wasn't perfect, but it was good enough.